from NBN's office in Gadigal country of the Eora Nation. And I'm so happy to see you all. And I'm so grateful that you've made an hour of your time available. And if you're starving, just eat. I would rather you had something yummy and you were having your lunch and you were relaxing. Hello, beautiful Sarah. There's your big smile. So many faces. I feel like it's coming into family. So I don't know why, but my iPad is not showing as Miss Sarah everybody's faces in the new view that we would expect. It's not showing me. Oh, there we go. So in the chat, tell me in 2 words or less, how are you feeling? In the chat, 2 words to describe how you're feeling. And I will too. Is it happy, foggy, tired, optimistic, frustrated, interested and open-minded, overwhelmed yet hopeful? That's the truth. Content and happy, eager and interested, really keen, focused, positive, tired, interested, productive and happy. Okay, well, there's a nice bang, a lot of common themes between us. Curious. And isn't it a surprise that we should all in some way or another be here because we're on the same wavelength? I confess to having had very little sleep last night and having to get up at 4 o'clock this morning. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Last night, because I knew I had exactly 5 hours of sleep ahead of me, I thought I might just take a little help to sleep. And I took what I thought was a little sleeping tablet, but actually what I took was a Zyrtec, which is an energizing antihistamine. So at 11:30, I'm going, why aren't I asleep yet? And at 12:30, I thought, I'm going to have a look in my drawer and work out what I just took. And at that point, I had the realization I'd taken something that was going to keep me awake all night. So I'm a little sleep deprived. But I'm very excited too because I'm actually in Sydney talking to a bunch of telcos about advancing some of the complex discussion around diversity and inclusion and the place that women have in shaping and crafting our world. And there's a lunchtime session today, and I know you're not all Compass graduates. And indeed, although I can only see women on my screen, I understand we've got some lads with us. So I want to make this as enjoyable and fun for you as possible, whilst dealing with what is arguably an incredibly serious topic. And so you've come here today to think about, talk about, listen to, and share ideas on leadership, the state of the planet, and what to do when it all feels too hard, which I'm going to refer to just for us as a bit of a shitstorm. And, you know, what do you actually do when you're in the middle of a shitstorm? How do you navigate it so you come out feeling purposeful, energized, and your worst case scenario is you had some fun. You might not have got the outcome you were after, but you have some fun and you do it with people you love and care to be with. I want to do the really serious bit first, in fact, if I can, and that is to talk briefly post what I would consider a very confronting month in Antarctica in December with 2 separate ships, and seeing on scale firsthand what's happening to our planetary systems. And many of you would know that I go to Antarctica, or have been going to Antarctica. I won't be going anymore, but have gone to Antarctica multiple times with women with a STEM background to help increase the influence of these women for a sustainable future. And they have already gone through 12 months of leadership development, and all of this grew out of Compass and our regional work with women. And the work culminates in a experiential pod environment in Antarctica. But this time, the scale of the change in Antarctica was mildly terrifying. And I think you can probably take out the word mildly. The rate of sea ice melt, the very obvious change in the physical environment, the volume of rain, shouldn't rain in Antarctica, the consequence of rain in very cold climates, it freezes, the consequence to breeding populations of young birds like little cute penguins is that before they fledge and get their adult feathers, their bodies are covered in a soft brown down, and that down isn't waterproof. So they get wet, they get muddy, they get cold, and then they freeze. And so massive wipeouts of bird populations, avian flu storming down the east coast of Argentina from the northern hemisphere. And when we were there, the disease was affecting all animals, not just bird life, and on scale. And there was an understandable and significant fear that it would reach the pristine environment of Antarctica. So much so bad were the conditions, including a 4-day storm that the captain had never seen before that we were in from the Weddell Sea. And, to say nothing of dealing with a 4-day storm and 10-metre waves, and half our group memorably ill, we had to change the itinerary because, one, we weren't sure we could get to South Georgia. 2, we weren't sure what we would witness when we got to South Georgia. 3, it felt like we were taking people into a COVID ward on a bus, and it felt morally wrong. The systems changes in Antarctica are a massive warning system to us all that it's not that the climate crisis is coming, the climate crisis has happened. It's here, it's happening. And we will see changes in our lifetime on scale. The scientists are already seeing it. And the single biggest emotion you have to deal with climate scientists is grief, because they feel like they've actually failed. They feel like they've failed to get through to us how serious the situation is. Now, I am at heart an optimist and an activist. And one of the things that everybody online from DG shares in common is, what can we do to help you affect the change that we will all need to contribute to? It's here, it's coming. We know what science is telling us. The ambiguity is not there. You can go onto LinkedIn and read an article I wrote about the science as a blog. And then the question I'm asking our community quite directly is, our leadership practice helping or hindering? And we would say, if you're brave, a lot of leadership practice is hindering the solutions, not necessarily you. And we don't talk about leadership as a person, we talk about it as a practice. And we want you to go into the chat room now and post, in what ways could the dominant model of leadership be restricting our ability to solve some of our toughest problems? So go into the chat room and have a bit of a storm in there, and we want to see what you get in there. How is it possible? Business as usual is a real trap. So that the problems are so big. Look, let's go back to doing what we were doing. Not bothering to look at the science. We're so inward looking, we make a judgment, well, the climate's fine in Melbourne, to which we would say, is it? Is that what you think? Is that, and where and how do you build that image? Rigidity in leadership is a real issue. So many very senior leaders have built their identity around where they are now and how successful they've been. And so success becomes its own worst enemy. Not supportive of alternative approaches. So instead of welcoming and encouraging and creating environments where difference is encouraged, difference is seen as a threat. Focusing on commercial, in inverted commas, realities at the expense of understanding that profit or bottom line is a consequence of doing something. And in the world that we're going into, we're going to have to do a whole lot more and be a whole lot more adaptable, resilient, and agile than where we've come from. A lack of courage. And courage, we would like you to remember, is courage. The word for heart is cour, and rage is the word for rage. Courage is rage of the heart, not enough courage, not enough shared purpose, not enough of the ability to go above and beyond business as usual. Short-termism, an incessant focus on growth without thinking about the cost of growth in terms of consumption. And yes, you know, the likes of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk might get us onto another planet, but why aren't we protecting the one planet we know we've got? And as the very famous Carl Sagan, physicist, philosopher, wise person, once said, no one is coming from outside this planet to rescue us from ourselves. We have to rescue ourselves. Meeting current targets rather than wrapping that into sustainable growth. And in fact, for those of you who are interested, in many ways, not matching sustainable development goals with internal development goals and asking ourselves, what sort of human being do I need to be to give us a best shot at handing over a planet that our children feel is in a better condition than now? Now, I don't think that anyone on the screen today is going to see in your lifetime or my lifetime the changes we want. But I can say to you, hand on heart, with deep, deep certainty, if we don't try, if we don't fight for the change and doing the part we think is necessary for the future we want, then no one else is going to see that change. And I am reminded multiple times over of a very important story I heard post the very awful Ash Wednesday fires, and I think that goes back maybe 1983, so thereabouts. And these fires wreaked havoc in Victoria. Many lives were lost. And there's one story about one particular part of just outside Melbourne, up in the hills. And it's an area in Melbourne that once upon a time was the escape area for the rich and the wealthy. And it's a small mountain. And the population there had money, so amazing houses had been built and phenomenal properties had been built. And the fire swept up the backside of the mountain, over the top, and flattened the southern-facing side of the mountain, which meant it destroyed dozens of amazing properties, many of which had botanic gardens, were houses that were built 70, 80, 100 years ago, all gone, all gone. And that ubiquitous picture in Australia post a bad fire, the twisted metal from a water container, the residual chimney from a house, the skeletons of the life that had been there. And sitting on the one access road going down the mountain is a young man in his 40s, and he's sitting with his head in his hands and he's crying. And he's crying for the loss of his family home, which is to his left. And that family home had been in his family for multiple generations, and it had gone. And an old man comes and sits behind him who had lived on the mountain for a very long time. And he squats down beside the young man and puts his arm around him and just comforts him as he cries. And when the crying subsides, the old man says to the young man, "What do you think you're going to do?" And the young man, wiping his face and sniffing, says, "What can I do? It's all gone. it's gone. And the older man patted him on the shoulder and said, so you're not going to rebuild the house? And the young man said, you're not listening to me. It's gone. We will never have anything like that again. We don't build houses like that. And the old man stood up and patted him on the head and said, so you're not going to plant the garden? And the young man looks at him saying, you're not listening to me. It's gone. I will never have that back. And the old man said, I hear you. It's lucky the people who built the house and planted the garden didn't think that way. And he walked off. And the young man told me the story, and he rebuilt the house and he replanted the garden. And I think that's the times we're living in. So the help we're going to give you is how the hell to get through this period of time and not get overwhelmed by the scale of the challenge. And if I'm looking into my hand, it's because I've become a modern tech person, which I actually find really hard. And all the PowerPoints I want to reference are actually on my phone. And I want to give you practical tips on what is in your control, how to affect change, and what helps or hinders you. So let's start.
Just quickly, Fabe, when you want, Chris can share the slides as well if you would like. So just,
yes,
yeah.
I will. So I want you to write down on a piece of paper, in your opinion, what do you think are the 3 best things you would do to navigate a shitstorm? And obviously that's a metaphor, and we want you to think about what are 3 things you would do to navigate a shitstorm. Just write them down on a piece of paper. And as soon as you've got that answer, just put your hand on your head so we know that you've got an answer there. And anyone who's online and has got their cameras turned off, we don't care what you look like, turn your cameras on. It's just wonderful to see you. And we have a lot of people online and we're not seeing you all. So turn your cameras on, let me see your beautiful faces. So when you've got your answers, there's 2 or 3 things that you do, put your hand on your head. That's our little trick to be able to see in each other. All right, Amanda Davidson, what were your 3 things? You all have to remember how to unmute yourselves. Do you know how to unmute yourself, Amanda? It's not working. Okay, we'll come back to you. See, I can't see your name now. Rahana, what about you?
Okay, so the first one, I said take the emotion out. The second, decipher the core issues. And the third one is make a plan.
Oh, nice. Thank you. There you go. That's the first set of tips. Michelle Bloom, give us your 3.
Yeah, a little bit similar. So I think learning about what's possible is really, really important. Dealing with the grief and making a plan.
Beautiful. Great.
Am I unmuted now? No.
Yes, you are. We can hear you. What are yours?
Oh, I said stay calm.
Yes.
Seek the bigger picture and start one step at a time.
Great. I don't need to do anything. Jane Davies, what are your three? Unmute.
Okay, take stock. I'd see if I could find people to assist, depending on the situation. But if it were a massive problem, find people to cooperate with, and that would be cooperation, work together.
Beautiful. Take stock, get help, work together. We can write the book after this. I'm hopefully not going to mispronounce this wrong. How do I pronounce your name?
My name is Fung.
Fung.
Yes.
Go
Hi,
for it.
Phoebe. Distill down where you have influence. Choose what you think you would enjoy doing of those tasks, and make a plan, including writing it down.
Brilliant. Valentina.
Hello, sorry. So I have here acknowledge emotions, check your perspective, and make a plan. Live from your values.
Beautiful. So the first thing I want to acknowledge is how much you know around this. And yet you've come here to hear more. And I listened to that string of suggestions and I go, they're all wonderful. There's nothing there that I wouldn't think is critical. The only thing I would probably, because quite a few of you identify it, is about taking the emotion out. There's actually no evidence that humans can do that. And the first thing I would say to all of you is I'm not sure we can take our emotions out of anything. Emotions inform us faster than what is out there. They are common to all of us. They precede rational or logical processing. Often when we talk about taking the emotion out, the real issue is take out the emotions that aren't helping you. You have a mechanism to manage the emotional reaction you're having to fear or grief. Fear in particular. So fear is an emotional state that we all have. The function of fear is to put you on high alert to threat. When you are on high alert to threat, your reasoning brain is not contributing. It is what we call an emotional hijack. And your emotional brain is basically going, oh, get out of here, evacuate, run. Don't do anything or fight. So flight, fight, or freeze. There's another one that we don't talk about much, but research done in the 90s on flight and fight added in a new one when looking at particularly research from women, which is placate. Everything will be all right. Calm down. You'll be all right. I'll look after you. And actually, everything might not be all right. And sometimes we have to say, you know what, folks? This is a shitstorm. This is a shitstorm. So we have to manage the emotions, but not stop them. Because I promise you, if you mask yourself to fear, if you cut off fear, you cut off anger, joy, hope. You cut off all emotions. And you need emotions to inform the reasoning brain. The emotions are in the driving seat, not the reasoning brain. So I have a quite terrifying image around mindset, which I might get Chris to share with you. And I use this as best I can in all situations where I'm either getting a lot of feedback on something that I've done that hasn't been effective, or I'm involved in something that is currently going to hell in a hay basket. And obviously, if you're going to go to hell in a hay basket, that's going to catch fire pretty damn quickly. So whatever security you think you have, you're not going to have it for very long. And I've bastardized Deepak Chopra's quote, which is, I trust my life fits in a bigger plan, to I trust my life fits in a bigger pan. And I say that because I don't come from a religious context, and I don't currently believe or know that a God exists. But I do know that the universe is vast, and as we learn a fraction more and more and more about it, that to take our own lives too seriously is somewhat silly. I'll get you to stop sharing again, Chris. But there's value in thinking I fit within a bigger habitat. I fit within a bigger system, ecological system. I'm part of a family. Even at its most basic level, I have 3 cats, which I love, and who bring me great joy and comfort. If I run around like a chicken with its head cut off, the cats will panic. So even at its most basic level, if I put aside human contact, the animals I share my life with, I don't want to frighten them. Now I come into my direct family. I have a duty of care, no matter what is happening, to help the family that I love, the team I work with, who I also love, feel calm and capable. Because frightened people don't do great things together. They don't do great things for themselves. Michelle Foster, who works in DG, and I was sharing notes on getting traumatic news very suddenly. Mine was when my eldest son, who's a film director and very tall, in one of his early productions about 9 years ago, was using, Sarah, what are they called? The devices you can mount a camera on that spin round and they film below. What are they called?
I don't know. I was like,
yes, you do. You'll see them along
drone.
beaches. People have got them. They're electrically controlled. You can launch
Drone? A drone?
Drone.
Yeah.
So it was a camera mounted on a big drone. And you may or may not know the function of the director is, unlike the cinematographer or director of photography who looks at live action, the actual director looks at what it's going to look like from the viewer's perspective. So you're looking at a computer screen. But being the tallest person in a budget film for a band, he is the launch pad, because he's got a 7-foot reach, 8-foot reach when he puts his arm up. He's the launch pad of this bloody device, and he is going with the camera mount, and he fleetingly looks down at the computer screen, and the whole thing tilts, and in split seconds makes mincemeat of his right hand. Of course, they all know it's a very serious accident. They wrap it up in whatever they've got. He's rushed to a local hospital. I get a call, and the call goes something like this. Fabe, Kes has been involved in a serious accident with a robocopter and his hand is badly damaged. I got such a rush of adrenaline, it completely took over my brain. I literally ran around our kitchen in circles, not knowing what to do and panicking, blind panic, until my husband caught me on the fourth lap, wrapped me in his arms, held me really tightly, and he said, breathe, just breathe. He's all right. He's all right. Just breathe. Mish was telling me last week, and all our staff know, that her beautiful husband, Brett, had a scare at work. And Brett is a sort of really tough warhorse. He's hardworking, never gets sick, never been sick ever, and he's Mishy's rock. And last week he had an episode at work where he got dizzy and he fainted, possibly because he hadn't eaten anything. But anyway, he's taken to hospital and she gets a call. Brett's been taken to hospital with a suspected heart attack. And she had the same overwhelming terror response, couldn't think what to do. So my first advice to you all, when confronted with a shitstorm, it's really difficult. Please put up the breathe slide. Chris. So this is the first rule. Super hard. Breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe. I'm going to come back to this slide. This is the biggest tip we can give you. Back to the audience. Just watch this. Everybody sit up straight. Let's all just try it, just for fun, and remind ourselves. Because I think it's one of the most important skills we will ever master. Shitstorm works, so they do a dramatic response, you stop and you do a funny thing, you go. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Nice big sit up. Do this, Kate, sitting up. A big deep breath in. Blow it out through pursed lips. Do another one. Breathe it in. Blow it out through your mouth. I see you, Shell. Breathe in. And blow it out through your mouth. Now that took 30 seconds. In the chat room, if you did it, write how you feel. Just write a word to describe how you feel. Calm, collected, better, centered, calm, relaxed, slowed the heart rate, aligned, clear of mind, better, calm, clear, human, lightheaded, peace, calm. So do you see what happened? It took you 30 seconds to do it. So somebody comes running in hysterically. It can be a child yelling, screaming. It can be a message on screen. It can be a telephone call. Stop. Breathe. 30 seconds, 4 to 6 deep breaths. And that will always happen. And what is happening is that 30 seconds to 60 seconds buys you time to let the adrenaline go. There is a 6-second rule around panic. The system floods the body with adrenaline in order for you to panic and run. The adrenaline goes straight out to all the tips, the very edges of your body, and takes the blood supply, the oxygen supply into high defense mode. At this stage, your brain is not thinking. Nature has taken over and is telling you to run or to fight. What we all need to do is calm down more. And you don't have to meditate. You don't have to go to big classes on this. You have to learn that breath is the single biggest tip to a senior leader, to any leader dealing with shitstorms. Breathe. And every time you think it is conceivably out of control, do it again and again. So you breathe. Now I'm going to go back to that slide. And I'm going to remind you of 6 triggers we talk about extensively in the work we do, both in Compass and in leadership development work with many different people. When you want to bring the best of yourself into the world and to be calm, you can't do it if you don't know your triggers. Am I a victim in this instance? Am I a villain? Am I a hero? When you feel calm and centered, you are none of those things. In a shitstorm, it is not our job to have all the solutions. It is not our job to rescue people. It is not our job to blame or be victimized. It is our job to center and calm down. The one thing people want most from us is our capacity to be calm. I had a great session with the exec and DG for the day yesterday, and I think we learn these tricks over and over and over again. And we have taken on board another diagnostic, which we will be sharing extensively in all the leadership work we will do around how power is used and how power is used as part of your role. Hugely interesting diagnostic, every bit as interesting as the lifestyles inventory from Human Synergistics. And I certainly personally got some feedback that was just staggering to me, that, you know, when I'm turning externally, I am bringing this calm, centered, respectful, enabling, fair, thoughtful, conflict resilient leader. But when I come into the business, what am I doing? There's a perception of preferential treatment, of behaving in ways that have people feeling I'm really distant, remote, not present, that they are intimidated by me. None of that is what I want. And yesterday, as we talked through our results, I really reflected on how much I'm not thinking about caring for the people around me as much as I am caring externally into our community, or how much calmness I might bring in my family. And one of the big pennies that dropped for me is I overestimate our capacity to weather stress, because my own capacity is quite high, and I underestimate how much calmness I'm responsible for bringing to the people around me. Overestimating their resilience, they are overestimating mine. And so the very strength we pride ourselves in with others becomes a liability internally, because we're not thinking about calmness and care internally. So when you breathe into calmness, be alert to your triggers. Am I a victim in what is happening? And you all know you're never a victim unless you start telling yourself that story. And when you're a victim, you're helpless. Am I a villain? Am I the attacker, the cause of the conflict? Is it my job to go out there and fight? Not really. Am I the hero? You know, the one everyone comes to. Somebody was telling me this morning they love being the agony aunt, the one everyone comes to with their problems. That's not good either. That's not useful either. People have to solve their own problems. So breathe, think, what am I triggered by? Am I victim, villain, or hero, or none of those? I'm calm and I'm neutral. So I'll get you to stop sharing for a moment and see, with just those two tips, what your thoughts are, reactions from anyone. Thoughts? I could go straight to Jalinda, because you're just wearing the world's best glasses with a great background, which you contrast magnificently.
Thanks, Fabian. I was just really engrossed in hearing what you were talking about, really. My thoughts are very similar to yours in the way we need to, use our emotions in a more positive light, if you like. Well, positive is the wrong word, but use our emotions
Constructive.
as something that does drive our actions, lean into some of those, you know, fears and understand where they come from. And I think just all those points that you made are they're not necessarily, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, they're not necessarily new things, but they're things
Not
that
at all.
we really need to make sure that we embed them to a point that they just become the norm for us.
Yes,
Mm.
100% spot on. There's nothing new in any of this, but we remind ourselves because we're heading into what could be a decade of shitstorming.
Mm.
And so helping each other to remember, one, oh my God, that's a big mistake, Jeanette. That's mean. She just put her Siamese right plumb in the middle of the screen. Did you all see that? Being a cat person, I find cats infinitely distracting. There's nothing new about this. But breathing and making a conscious choice of who we choose to be and being calm around the people we're with, our children, our families, our community, in traffic, at work, online. Don't put fuel onto fires which are about blame and judgment, villain, victim, and heroes. Calm people down and they crave it like a drug. Anyone else? Annette Tui, I see you online. What are your thoughts on this as one of the calmest leaders I know?
I just think that, and I put it in the chat, that trying to be aware of our internal states. And for me, language is important. It shapes how you understand and approach an issue. So the language that we use to describe things and picking up on the language that others use to describe things is really important. But yeah, I just think that, again, that trying to be calm is really important, but you can only do that if you're actually aware and consciously aware of your own internal states.
Beautiful. And you added on a third ingredient, which we would also agree is vitally important, the use of language. And I am amazed how many people are unaware of how much adjectives can create anxiety. This is a huge issue versus this is an issue. Oh my God, this is a crisis versus this is going to be complex. Oh, I'm not going to go into the toilet. We had this in our office as well. There's a gigantic huntsman in the toilet and I'm terrified of them. I don't like spiders. Can somebody else remove the spider from the bathroom? So wherever you're dealing with emotions that can get out of control, how do you contract the language and be conscious of not doing stuff to yourself? I'm such an idiot. Versus that's something I'm struggling to learn a bit. I need to talk to somebody. I'm struggling with it. I keep making the same mistake. And you think about the voice you use internally about yourself. So that then leads to the second thing we say to people. For those of you who haven't done the Human Synergistics Lifestyles inventory, do it. And if you don't know where to go for it, you can come to us for that. LSI 1 and 2 can be life-changing. And I'll say can be life-changing because it's not always done well. Lifestyles Inventory 1 tells you the stories you tell yourself about yourself. If you don't face into the stories, if you're coming from a fear of getting things right, you know you have perfectionistic predisposition, you've got this frame in your head that's either win or lose, that when challenged you hold on to knowledge or power for fear of becoming powerless, or at times you feel like your voice simply doesn't count, so you check out. Or maybe you worry about what everybody thinks of you, and it controls a very big part of your internal processing. Do people like me? Am I welcome? And instead of going to, what is the outcome here? What is my emotional reaction and how do I help people? I'm so convinced I need to make sure you're all okay and you're happy with what I'm doing and we're doing it the right way, or we're doing it the way it's been laid down for us, that we don't even stop and think, how could we do this differently? And in a shitstorm, we have to know the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And we have to learn to rewrite those stories so they're constructive. And a constructive story is always clear when I'm clear on the why of what I do. When I have the courage to ask myself, what am I doing and what could I do differently? Why am I responding this way? What is my trigger? Am I responding to these people as if they were my father? My father's been dead since I was 30. When will I let go of the triggers that affect how I see myself in relationship to the world? And then, how am I helping? How am I actually helping people? Icing on the cake is I have a positive regard for people. So we breathe. We're mindful of calmness and its impact on other people. We are alert to the stories we tell ourselves in order to tell ourselves stories that help us help others. Can you pop that slide up again, Chris? Never ignore your emotions. Emotions inform thinking. And as a metaphor, we'd want you to walk away with and remember that your emotional self is in the driver's seat. Your rational self is a passenger. But your emotions drive you, and their pathway to action is ancient. Our emotions predate reasoned thinking by millennia. I want you to imagine your emotions are the operating system MS-DOS, and your rational thinking is a Microsoft program, an update on Word released last week. One is seamless and thoughtless, and one requires a great deal of effort. So if emotions are seamless and thoughtless, the risk is we will get an outcome that is thoughtless, when the solution has to be thoughtful. Always we say, be aware of the stories, old stories, blame and judgment, family stories. And if you're stuck, get help. You can rewrite your story, and it's not as hard as you think. It's just very hard to do on your own. Next one, please, Chris. This is very old, but incredibly relevant in the times in which we live, and you're welcome to take a photograph of this side. It's actually the Myers-Briggs Z decision-making tool. And whilst Myers-Briggs is a discounted instrument in the context of psychotherapy or use of psychological instruments, it's actually a bit like having a hammer and some nails in your hand. It's a very practical tool. And so when you are confronted with a complex decision or a shitstorm and you've calmed everyone down, you're breathing, you're aware of the story you're telling yourself, you're helping others, not blame, not judge, and not try and be victim, villain, or hero. You say, okay, what are the facts? You always go to the facts first, because in preferences, people who have a high preference for data are not tolerant to big picture thinking when they don't have all the facts on the table. People who are big picture thinkers will wait. So up on the wall, get all the facts of the situation. Always make the facts visible to people. When you write them down, it externalizes it from the way we're thinking. Then you go to intuition. What options do we have? If you can't generate options, chances are you have not put down enough information around the facts. So go back to the facts. When any part of this doesn't work, just go back one level. So first, what are all the facts that are germane to the problem? Second, what are our options? When all the options are on the table, then thinking, what are the criteria for an effective decision? When we look at the options, what criteria will we use to select the best option? Now, many of you know that process, but it's the fourth one that consistently and religiously kind of gets overridden. We have a meeting. We've got a complex decision to make in business. This is the budget. This was a strategic plan. Here's the operational plan. This is the fact of where we are today. All right, what are our options for moving forward? the sales team, the marketing team, the operational team put down the plan. What are the criteria for the solution? Everyone on board with that? Yes, and we leave the meeting. Then a funny thing happens in the corridor. Bill says to Sally, what do you think about that? And Sally goes, oh, it's okay. But I'm not entirely convinced everyone in that room was on board with it. And Sally had an alert system that got overridden because nobody asked at the end of the meeting, what do you feel about that decision? Who will it have an impact on? Of the people involved, who will be affected? I'll get you to stop sharing for a minute, Chris. Always be alert in a critical event. When you've done that cycle, who will be affected by the decision you just made, and how do we feel about that? And you have as much time on how we feel about the decision as you did on agreeing on the solution, on generating options, and on generating the facts. And in my experience, that's consistently overrun. So in the end, be present-minded, acknowledge what's happening, breathe, come above the problem, allow yourself to look at the meta view. Don't rush in, give other people space. Your job is to be calm and enable all people. Check your self-talk. What's happening is only one part of life. Don't obsess about it. Shitstorm advice in a lunchtime. Has that been useful? In the chat room? Has that been useful? Always. Very useful. Supportive reminder. Great. Very useful. Good. Yes. Very useful. Thank you. Great. Simple but effective tools. Great reminders, of course. All of you know these things. Wonderful. So good to touch base. A big smile. Thanks, Fabi. Good. Thanks. All right, my loves. We will keep coming to you with advice and reminders. And there is no single piece of advice in today more important than breathing. And on that lovely note, I'm going to pass to Miss Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. We love putting on these sessions and being able to connect with our broader community. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you all to a fabulous new team member that we have on board with us, who is Chris. She's a Compass Community Manager. So I see a lot of familiar faces. And this was initially a Compass Lunchtime Leadership Session, but we did open it up because the topic was quite broad. So we've got some people potentially on here that also haven't done Compass, but I'll pass to Chris to introduce herself and talk more about what we've got coming up for you all.
Thank you, Sarah and Phoebe. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's really great to be here. I think I'm 6 weeks in now at Datna Group. So, and we have our my first Compass program starting on Thursday, and I can see a few people in the room today that are in that cohort of women. So I'm really excited to start that. And so for those of you that don't know about Compass, we have an online program coming up starting in June, and then we also have a face-to-face program in Melbourne coming up in September, and that's the first time we've offered a face-to-face program since before COVID. So we're really excited about that and coming together in person at the zoo, which will be really fun. So if you'd like to know more about Compass, I'm going to put our email in the chat, my email in the chat. Please reach out and I can send you some more information about that. Yeah, but thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to more of you throughout my time here at Datna.
Thank you, Chris. And as always, thanks, Fabe. I can't see your face anymore. But yeah, a wonderful session as always. And I hope that everybody took something out of it. The chat seems to be going off, so that's always a good sign. If anyone wanted, Chris and I can hang out for a couple more minutes afterwards. I'm not sure if Fabe has to duck off. So if anyone had any questions or wanted to have a quick chat with us, we'll stay on the line for a couple more minutes. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Have a great day and rest of the week, everybody.
I'll stay on too, Sarah.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Shell.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Bernadette. I was going to call you. I'll call you. Can't hear you.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Famous words.